his breath reeking of cheap gin and stale marijuana. My cousin pinned me against the venue wall and whispered that my new husband was going to leave me. You have exactly 8 seconds to decide if you let a grieving man destroy your marriage, or if you become the absolute monster who severs blood ties forever. By the time the cake is cut, you will understand why unconditional family forgiveness is just a trap designed to protect abusive men. The morning began with the suffocating scent of lilies and floor wax inside the church. I knelt at the front pew, adjusting the lace on my dress, when the heavy oak doors groaned open. Mark stumbled in, his eyes bloodshot and darting toward the altar. The sharp, skunky odor of marijuana clung to his suit, mixing violently with the frankincense. He pulled a silver flask from his inner pocket and took a long, desperate pull right there in the vestibule. My aunt patted his shoulder, whispering about his recent loss, completely ignoring the amber liquid dripping onto the marble floor. My family is the kind that is afraid to call out bad behavior from angry men. We just swallow the poison. He planned this. By the time the light bled out of the reception hall, the atmosphere shifted from celebratory to predatory. Mark and his wife roamed the perimeter of the room like starving hounds. They trapped my teenage cousin near the buffet table. I watched his wife pin the girl against the draped linens, leaning in too close. The girl crossed her arms, shook her head, and tried to step away. Mark blocked her path, laughing loudly while his wife grabbed the girl's wrist. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped her clutch. Subwoofers rattled the floorboards, masking the uncomfortable silence radiating from that corner. And before you judge my silence, try wearing a silk dress while your entire bloodline watches you drown. Mark abandoned the cornered girl and marched straight toward the DJ booth. He slammed his palms onto the folding table, demanding a complete change in the playlist. The DJ looked toward my sister for guidance. My sister walked over, placed a firm hand on the turntable, and instructed the DJ to ignore my cousin entirely. Mark spun around, his face flushed a mottled crimson. He stomped across the wooden floor, stopping inches from my face. He pointed a trembling finger at the booth and demanded I kick the DJ out within 30 minutes. I looked at his dilated pupils and outright refused. Subwoofers rattled my ribs as I watched his chest heave with manufactured outrage. The grieving relative mask dissolved. This was not the erratic behavior of a man paralyzed by profound grief. This was starved narcissism, demanding absolute control over my wedding day. He sneered, looking me up and down, and loudly declared that my husband was far too handsome for a woman with my facial structure. Then he turned his attention to the groom. Mark stepped into my husband's personal space, lowering his voice to a gravelly purr. He made bizarre, inappropriate sexual comments about my husband's physique, licking his lips while suggesting they leave the reception early. The groom stiffened, his jaw locking tight as he took a step backward. The scent of his cheap cologne mixed with the sour tang of sweat rolling off Mark's neck. He lunged. The opening chords of our first dance echoed through the speakers, but Mark refused to yield the floor. He physically crowded my husband, pressing his chest against my groom's shoulder. His hand slid down, resting heavily on my husband's hip, his fingers digging into the wool fabric of the tuxedo. The heat radiating from Mark's body was palpable. I stepped directly between them, driving my shoulder into Mark's chest, forcing him to break physical contact. The sequins on my dress scraped against his sleeve as I wedged myself into the gap. My husband exhaled a sharp breath, stepping back into the shadows of the terrace. Mark sneered, adjusted his lapels, and walked away into the crowd. You think grief excuses a hand sliding up a groom's hip? I retreated to the quiet corridor behind the reception hall, seeking a single moment of silence. The heavy wooden door clicked shut behind me. Mark stepped out from the alcove. He blocked the exit, the stench of alcohol rolling off him in thick waves. He leaned in close, his lips curling into a cruel smile. He bypassed the wedding chaos entirely to deliver a surgically precise insult. He called me a bitter, resentful person. He whispered that my husband would inevitably realize his mistake and leave me within the year. His words hung in the stagnant air, thick and metallic. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a low, irritating frequency that made my teeth ache. He knew exactly where to strike. I stood there, listening to the muffled cheers of my family in the main hall. They expected me to walk back out, smile for the flashing cameras, and automatically forgive him because he was hurting. They weaponize grief as a societal free pass for angry men. Women are culturally conditioned to absorb the collateral damage to keep the family unit intact. My wedding was tainted by his malice. I feel a deep, hardened resentment toward my family's sickening demand for automatic forgiveness. I am firmly resolved to avoid my cousin at all costs. But as I watch my husband walk toward me down the corridor, rubbing the back of his neck and avoiding my eyes, I wonder if Mark's poison has already started working.
We are observing a textbook escalation of narcissistic personality structure with pathological envy and coercive triangulation. Mark does not merely attend his cousin's wedding, he attempts to annex it. Notice the meticulous progression of his boundary violations. It begins covertly concealing alcohol consumption at the church and utilizing substances to lower his own inhibitions while testing the environment's compliance. When the environment does not yield, the behavior externalizes. Mark and his wife aggressively pursue guests, explicitly refusing to accept rejection. This is a calculated probe for dominance. When the bride's sister establishes a boundary with the DJ, Mark attempts to bypass her by issuing a 30-minute ultimatum directly to the bride. This is a coercive control tactic designed to fracture the family alliance. When that fails, Mark pivots to pathological envy and triangulation. He devalues the bride's physical appearance relative to her husband, simultaneously deploying bizarre sexual advances and physical crowding toward the groom. He is attempting to usurp the primary attachment figure on the dance floor, using physical intrusion to provoke a reaction. Finally, when physically thwarted, Mark isolates her, cornering her alone to deliver a malicious prediction that her husband will inevitably leave her. Is a classic devaluation tactic. It is a parting psychological payload designed to ensure that, even in his absence, his malice colonizes her internal landscape. He leaves her with the exact insecurity he sought to exploit, which explains why the groom is now avoiding her gaze in the corridor.